Rebecca Paplow, and tonight we are here with Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Red Line, a podcast geared toward emotional well-being for employees and that looks at the cross-sections of wealth, health, gender, and class. I'm your host, Alessandra Nicholson, and this is my co-host, Rebecca Paplow. And tonight we are here with you with Sarah B. Cruz.
Hi.
Professional development extraordinaire, serial entrepreneur, as well as a board member, elected board member of HSPA. We're here with her in HSPA's conference in 2022. So we just wanted to take a moment to sit down and talk to her about what it's like being an entrepreneur, a professional, a representative of the industry, and coming in this new capacity. And we're coming off of the heels of the HSPA conference where a lot of us are here for the first time. We're coming into a public gathering at during a pandemic. Let's just say during a pandemic. But this is something that it's so emotional for us in so many different ways, whether it's the first time, through the pandemic, but also meeting a ton of our newfound friends from social media. And it's also very nerve-wracking. There's so many emotions involved, excitement, self-esteem issues, being self-conscious. There's so many things going through all of our minds right now at this conference and seeing all of these people that we associate with the industry. So we wanted to pull Sarah in and have a discussion with that stuff. It's something that public speaking has been so prominent within this conference this week. And so that is something that is so difficult for so many of us because it takes a lot of oomph to get up there, a lot of confidence, a lot of it takes a lot. It takes a lot of soul to get up there. So I don't know. I wanted to ask you, what emotions did you feel this week? Because you were doing your presentation in multiple capacities this week. You were at a vendor booth. You were in the you were in the educational room. Yeah, you were in the education of the classroom, and then you for your LLC pre-CSS, you had your first private event.
I did. That was so fun.
Yeah, can you just tell us what you were feeling and how you conquered that? And
Okay, yeah, just to be clear, before I start, all of those things that were listed, I speak on behalf of myself. I don't speak for anybody else. Anything that's said in this discussion is Sarah B. Cruz just being CSS nerd, and all of those things make up just one big person and not the opinions of the people that they are comprised of. Yeah? Okay. Thank you for allowing me to have this disclaimer. It's very important. It's important. So when you speak for yourself, you can't assume that you speak for everyone. And that's why that type of disclaimer is important, and it feeds into the type of question that you asked, right? So when we speak, it's important to remember that we are just trying to create a presentation of ourselves. We can't be held responsible for the impression that other people have of us, because we're taking into consideration that we can control everything that someone makes an impression upon. And I can't take on every person's personal upbringing, demographic, cultural diversities, geographic upbringing, income. There's so many different subjects that you touch on Behind the Red Line that I can't take and even think that I can control. So it's important to remember that when you never get over being nervous speaking in front of people, it usually just gets easier, however you describe easier, to deal with. I use a power pose and I keep rocks in my pocket. legit. I got rocks in my pocket. Yes. And and just making sure that you remember that you are in control of your presentation and working on the skills in that space to do so. And all the rest, like, people gotta deal with their own stuff. I'm not trying to save the world.
Honestly, don't they? You touched on something there with the fact that there are so many intersections. Right? We're talking about race, we're talking about class, we're talking about gender, we're talking about religion. There's so many different more to even add, right? So even our presentation right now, there are certain different groups that may look at us and say, we're dressed inappropriately, we're not professional, right? Because we don't have on floor-length skirts, or because we're in pants, or because we're wearing white, or whatever the thing may be, right?
Right.
So I can't control how they feel about it or why they feel about it.
Right.
All I can control is how I present myself.
Exactly. And if we have ways that resonate with us as a person, I think that we'll be all right. But with that being said, remember, it's not just saying, well, that's just me. Because if you just being you isn't allowing yourself to elevate to the presentation that helps you reach your goals, you're not just being you, you're just giving you an excuse to not reach them.
Truly shortchanging. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's important. And control what you can, leave the rest, and don't try to save the world. Just stay focused.
So, being that you've now been in this conference space as a technician, you've been in this, you've moved up into education, so now in a management capacity, you're coming to this conference now, adding LLC owner, adding, having all these different relationships, as you said.
Sure.
I'm curious to ask this question of you in two ways. When you're in the networking space as a technician and you have that person that's speaking and you're drawn to them, you want to go up and you want to ask them questions, because this is really popular. After the presenters are finished, they hang around for people to come up and chit chat.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
And it takes a lot of courage for you guys to get up there, but it also takes a lot of courage for the technician or the person you're speaking to approach you and ask you a direct question. Because we kind of have a tendency to fangirl as if we're not all human beings.
Right? We start to compare ourselves.
We start to compare ourselves.
Comparisonitis.
And not only do we start to compare ourselves, but sometimes that comparison can be positive, where it's, I see myself in this person, so I can now step up a little taller, or it could be negative, and I don't see myself in this person, and so I want to shrink back. And this is why diversity and inclusion is so important, and why representation matters.
Sure.
And that those two things are not just synonymous with just race, but it's important that there's diversity in what womanhood looks like, what race looks like, what religion looks like, what leadership looks like. Because if I see you, I may identify, and then I want to step up. So as a tech, if you're coming into this space, Sarah B. Cruz is presenting, you go up to her, you ask her a question, and she's really not receptive. Or maybe her answer makes you feel like she's kind of looking at you like you're a moron.
Oh, I see. Okay.
How do you respond in that way?
So the tech is appreciating this impression, right? So I think it's important to leverage your own reality in that situation first. So 2 kudos for going up. You went up to the person because you believed there was something insightful, as Alessandra had pointed out. But first, leverage your reality. Is it imposter syndrome? Are you sure that they're thinking that? Or is it just you overthinking because you're nervous? So make sure that you understand your own reality before you project it onto somebody else's. And I am still very much learning that, right? So just because it's something that I'm perceiving doesn't mean that that person is kicking that out. I might be pushing it out and they're a mirror, So if that is happening, and then, if you have the situation where, like, sometimes when individuals speak, they're tired at the end, especially if their session had run long. And, picking your spot to network is also important. So if you get up there and you're like the 5th person in line, you might get the tail end of that. And remember, that's not an excuse. Everyone should be held to a certain level of respect, and you're a person, you deserve to have good things, but you also want to make sure that the energy you're putting out into that conversation gets the reception and the reciprocation that you want. And if you're like the 5th or 6th person in line, maybe wait. Right. So you're gonna see them. Don't talk to them while they're eating, though. Don't talk to them no, I'm just kidding. You can talk to them if they're eating, but you just pick your spots.
I've encountered that a lot this week, and it's been interesting because this is my first actual big event as with myself in this role, newer confidence, more mature in my professional development. Okay, this is the first time I'm I got to go talk to this person. I got to go talk to this person. I want to ask this person a question, right? So after each conference speaker, I'm like, oh my God, I just nerded out so hard, right? So then I go up,
Nerd.
especially today, for example, with Marianne Droznak. I was like,
Oh, so
I
good.
love this woman for the work that you put in for this topic that I'm so passionate about. But I think you could just tell, like, I felt like I did not pick the right time. So that's when you're like, yep, I'll just email you my list of 40 questions. Sorry about that. 40 questions. Real third grade. So yeah, I'll email you my list of questions. They always provide you with contact information. So sometimes it's all about picking your time.
That's very true. Because that contact information will be at the end of the slides.
Yeah.
So there is, even if you can't ask the question at that time, there is a way to follow up. And before we move on to the next section, I want to also second this. So now you're coming into this space as an entrepreneur.
Oh, okay.
And you're setting your intentions. You're having deliberate conversations. You know what you're after. You're on the conference floor, or you set a meeting and you're making a pitch, and it's just not received, or they're not seeing the vision.
All right.
How do you feel? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, and I think this next part kind of goes into the first one too, where it's like making sure how you're presenting the proposition is important, and it's still something that I very much struggle with. And you called me an entrepreneur, and I was like, oh my God, she thinks I'm an entrepreneur. Me. Anyways, but it's, I'm still struggling with that. I'm still learning with that, and making sure that you are looking, how do you say? So when you are presenting, you got to get to the point.
Yeah.
Get to the point, right? So if you are speaking and you haven't gotten to the point of your question within the first 2 sentences, it's taken too long.
Yeah.
All right. So make sure that you've crafted some type of introductory statement where it's like, I say who I am, I say what I do, I say what service I provide, what solution I offer, and how I do that. All right. And you don't have to be an entrepreneur to have that. You can just be, I'm a tech too. I work in this facility. I have this dream. I'm doing this to go and get it. I'd like to see how you can support me. So that last part, the call to action, is very important too, because what are you expecting of the person? Because they can't read your mind. And if you can't effectively articulate self, you're trying to make a pitch. And that's like where I struggle. I can't. I struggle with articulating self effectively, which is why I speak on it, because you're doomed to teach your biggest lessons. And I'm still learning that lesson. So I haven't quite figured out the whole pitch it successfully action,
Absolutely.
but it's a process I'm very much learning. And the individuals that I'm working with in that space are very gracious to teach and mentor.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
And it takes time. So if you don't get it right away, and if you fumble at first, that's okay.
You're gonna stink at it. You're gonna stink.
So like, through all of this, what are some of the tools through your journey in navigating these discussions and these pitches? What are some of the tools that you've discovered that help you keep your nerves at bay, help keep your mind on track, keep your emotions in check during this conversation?
Oh, yeah. So I don't think I keep my emotions in check. That's not a thing. But I do make sure that I respond to my emotions instead of allowing myself to react to them.
Such a key distinction.
It is. It's big. It's big. And, it was something that crippled me very early on in my professional, I don't even want to call it career, because I was definitely in a job mentality,
Oh, man.
So
another
it's
key distinction.
Yeah, and
I
it's
see we're gonna have to bring you back.
Yeah, and it's
behind the red line.
And it's big, and self-limitation and in that aspect definitely kept me in that space. So being able, you can honor your emotions without reacting to them. And you honor your emotions by allowing yourself to respond to them. I am still learning that. I'm still doing different tools. Like I do a hard stop. I do big pauses, intentional pauses, and a lot of the times I'll change posture when I start to feel emotionally driven. I'm conscious of pulse. My hands start to shake, so it's being aware of self in that space is important too.
It takes a
I still stink at it though, so
it takes a lot to recognize when your emotions are also getting the best of you, and when you're becoming the best of you, and your conversation is no longer going to be effective.
Right.
And you really,
This is deteriorating quickly.
yes, one of the biggest things that you do is take time. This is not something that's going to happen overnight, but being able to recognize that within yourself, being able to realize I'm really pissed off right now, or I'm about to start crying. I can't handle this.
Or I'm crying because I'm mad.
So, and
You step away
especially
and
with
walk
that,
away.
right? You see that that's coming up. You feel like I need to bail out, but also your dismount matters, right?
Exactly.
So
you
it's
can't
not
just storm
dismount.
off.
your
I like
dismount
that.
from that
Oh, I
conversation
like
matters
that.
because you can't allow the.
Hashtag
I mean, you
dismount.
could, but it would be better to not allow that fear to make you do something like freeze and then just scurry away, right? Because it's socially awkward, and the first impression does matter.
Sure.
So having tools in your belt, like the tools you gave earlier, some just simple things you can say, like, you know what? I'm feeling like there's so much more I want to share with you. I'd really like to schedule some time in the future to continue this conversation.
Yeah.
Right? So that you can exit gracefully, right?
Yeah.
And not tell the person, I'm really sweating and I'm really taking a mile a minute and I just want you to know that like I'm hot and I gotta go.
Or if you're in an uncomfortable situation, you could say something along the lines of, I feel like I need to set a professional boundary and step away for a moment. And that takes guts to say.
Yes.
But keeping it short, simple, and direct, it leaves that person that you may not feel comfortable with a set boundary.
Sure.
And you know what? That one statement can put them in check.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I use a lot of hard stop. So like when I start a conversation, I'm like, listen, I have to do a hard stop at this time. Because one, it helps with conversation, and especially with individuals who are anxious. So it's not a tool that works for everybody. And the way you say it, like I can't talk to you for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Just be like, hey, I have a prior obligation. I have this much time. I really want to prioritize it and give it to you because, their time is valuable too. So honoring that they want to share their time with you. You're not just somebody because somebody wants to share time with you. You become someone to someone when you share your time with them. So, and that's where the connection happens. So I do a lot of like, hey, I have this time available. I want to dedicate it to you, but I have to stop at this time. What do you need me to bring?
Because
so
here's the thing, you're not just trading time, you're trading value, right? Especially when we're talking about this networking conversation. I'm looking to add value to you. I'm looking for you to add value onto me. I want to be very direct and intentional.
Sure.
One last thing that I want to ask you, because we've all been navigating this. We're here. We need to be on, right? Because you've got to present. You have to be there. So you've got to be there ahead of time. You've got to be able to receive, set up, right? You're going to stay after the session. You're going to do the session.
Sure.
You're going to stay after the session to receive people. Then there's networking events that you got to show up for.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Right? Because that's why we're here as individuals, as entrepreneurs, as attendees. It's almost like you can work a 24-hour day in this experience. So one of the things that you kept saying was you got to do the self-inventory. You got to do the self-inventory.
Sure.
I also want to hear about how you do your self-care needs. Like, how do you respond when you need to pee, when you need to eat, when you need to sleep, and you can't do it as much as you would want to.
Oh, I see.
I want to know, are there things in your routine that just don't change? Like, I don't care where I am. I don't care how much little time I have. I'm going to always hit a shower that day. Or I'm always going to hit a workout that day. Or I'm always going to hit a prayer that day, a meditation that day. Is there anything that never wavers for you when it comes to self-care and you're in this kind of overwhelming experience?
Yeah, so recently it's my morning time, and I think that's why I start my day on the earlier side because there are no demands except my own, and the biggest demand I have for myself is that morning. So it's a nice way to start the day, make sure that I've designated space to that before I'm even considering exchanging my time with somebody else, right? So, and I think a really big part to understand is that when we schedule our day, I heavily suggest putting the things you need first. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not selfish. unless you're taking advantage of somebody else to achieve that, that's different. But like, you know, I put in my meal times into my calendar. I put 15-minute breaks into well, I don't like 15-minute breaks because I like 20-minute breaks. And even my alarms are like that. So I have 2 separate alarms, right? And one goes off at 3:40 and the other, and I shut it off, and the other one goes off at 4 o'clock. So it's almost like I took a nap after I woke up, which was a great, who doesn't like waking up from a nap, right? So, you know, I put in my self habits into the calendar where it's like lunch, because everything is, booked, right? Like, and it's not like that. Like, listen, let's just like, it's not like that all the time, but still, you know,
if you
not always booked. Like, it's not like that,
time, right? If you don't set an intention about the time, it may or may not happen, right? If I don't create this block, then if something else comes along during that time I would have normally eaten, I'm gonna choose what's in front of me, especially when you're driven, especially when you're hungry, right? Like, and I mean hungry as in chasing my dream, chasing my vision, right? If 3 o'clock rolls around and there's 8 people that randomly walked up to me in a hallway and I haven't eaten, I want to have that conversation with them if that thing comes.
Yeah, I usually tell them to come eat with me.
You know, like,
I'm like, come on, let's go eat.
Include you in that,
you know?
Because I think what is really important here, and we'll kind of start to wrap up here, is just what you described as pouring into your cup, right? So that there's actually an overflow that comes out for everybody else to receive. Rather than you just tipping that cup over and pouring it out for them. And then when everybody's gone and everybody's well watered, there's nothing left for you.
Well, you know, and I also think it's important to point out that I have a full-time job too. So, and that's not like and I got a full-time, like, it's not like that. But, you know, even in my calendar, I'm blocking when I'm at work, because when I'm at work, when I'm at work, I'm always sterile processing, right? We're always sterile processing. But when I'm at work, I'm their sterile processing.
Exactly.
They need me to move in a certain capacity that I have agreed to in my job obligations. I can't be working on PowerPoint presentations for the conference. I can't be, you know, fielding one-on-one conversations when I'm at work. And even social media boundaries are important in that aspect. Sure, I could get on my phone and like post on Pre-Treat CSS and all that, but I'm at work. So if I'm going to do that, it's either I'm going to do that on my lunch, which I don't. I do not post on my lunch break. Sometimes I'll go in and comment though, and like heart and clap you know, I get clappy on LinkedIn. So that's usually when I'm clapping, is when I'm at lunch, because that's fun for me.
Like sometimes on my breaks, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go check my email. I'm going to do this.
No.
So why do you choose not to?
Oh yeah, I get it. Because it's important to have those spaces where it's just me.
Yeah.
And there's so many different parts of just me, right? And just you and just us. And it's not just me, you know, but there's so many parts of me that demand my attention, that I demand my attention. And my attention is on that lunch.
And I just want to also add that unless checking emails is meditative for you, because everybody has a different sauce.
Sure, yeah. Not here to yuck anybody's yum.
I mean, I'm not going to say that. Everybody got different sauce. Okay? Emails don't make me feel relaxed. Okay? But
I like to start my day with emails. I'm like,
I like to start my day, but I'm starting my work.
Like, listen, if you ever get to email me at 4 a.m., I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. But to your point, if emails are not meditative for you, you're taking a break, and doing emails is not you taking a break. You taking a break is you not producing at this time. So you're checking emails, you didn't take a break. And I want to really drive that home for managers about what you're saying. Do the blocking. You deserve it.
Yeah,
and your
I love
employees deserve it. And it's never selfish, because if I'm my best self, I'm giving my best service. And if I'm my number one resource for my staff and I want them to have the best, then I need to treat me like I'm high value. I need to pour value into myself, so there's more for me to get to.
And you know, like, let's take a soft stop really quick, because there is going to be times where you have to push through, right? When we're discussing competing priorities, like, you know, the last 2 weeks before the conference for me were really big. We were just starting launch runway for the conference, the Pre-Treat CSS professional development strategy session. That launch runway was starting 2 weeks before the conference. You know, I was finishing up the presentations for the conference. I was submitting some articles. I was tightening up a paperless rollout, you know, so
turn it up, right?
Right.
We're going into this thing.
Right. And it's like you launch, right? And you're trying to tie everything up before you go out. So, you know,
it's game day.
But not everything is a priority. So it's different when like you have to work through those spaces that you've blocked because you're trying to meet end goals, because it feels good, it resonates with you. if at any point in time a priority makes it feel like you're just prioritizing everything, I'm concerned with time management and delegation of self. And there's a whole lot of space in that. Like a lot of people overwork, and I'm not here to say like what they should or shouldn't do. So, but there is always like, you can take priorities, and these are not fixed. They're malleable, right? Like a ribbon retractor. So
But also, like, for regular technicians, you are entitled, depending on your facility's policy, to 15. You're a 12-hour work week, a half hour and 15. Now,
not a 15 in decon, right?
Not a 15, not a 15 decon, guys.
No.
It's busy as hell. And so many people feel like, it's too busy, I can't do this. But guess what? You need to sit down and you need to check out for 15 minutes. And I know you feel like you can't, but it's so important that if you are allowed that time, take it.
Right.
Yeah, check out to check in.
I've been there, and honestly, like, our crew now, like, we're so indebted to the job and just getting stuff done that we don't take the breaks. But you know what? I changed that about myself. Like, in the mornings, I'm entitled to 15, I'm stepping away. So you have to. It's something that you really need to learn, that boundary. If it's something that you can do it.
Well, and I think a good word that you said is learn. You
Yes,
know, these are you know, habits. They're systems, like James Clear talks about. I talk about building systems in a very similar way, an integrity check. You know, so you have to flex and rip the muscle and practice. You're going to be terrible at it at first, and people, you are not responsible for how people respond to your boundary. Okay. Now, how you present your boundary, you might be a little responsible for that. Don't be, you know, but that's a whole other thing, right? And I am not the subject matter expert behind that. You should probably talk to Sharon Combs about that. But at the same time, you know, you're not responsible for how somebody responds to your boundary. And that's more of a reflection of what they're going through than what you need to really take into, you know what I mean? So just, it's okay to put that space in there. And, but how are you going to respond to someone's reaction to your boundary? Because they're reacting to your boundary.
And honestly,
So,
like, if you're in a leadership position, or whether if you're in a leadership position primarily and you do this stuff for yourself, like our keynote speaker talked about on Monday, about the trickle down effect. So if you do something, you're helping somebody else out, or helping, you know, there's a trickle down effect. So it can really help boost morale with certain things. I'd like to ask you one more question. So in the beginning of this, we were talking about, you know, fear of networking, comparing each other, learning how to navigate networking for the first time with so many of us in these conferences this week. Can you tell us about a difficult time that you had when you were first starting out with networking, where you may have fumbled and felt like it disrupted the whole conversation?
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's actually part of my origin story. So a lot of why I started pre-treat CSS was because I was trying to professionally develop. I don't know what I would call, I was doing something. It wasn't working, but I was doing something, and I was trying real hard. Okay. But I was doing something, and nothing was really working out because I didn't have a strategy behind it. I wasn't being intentional. I was just moving a lot without really creating any motion. Right. Busy work doesn't mean purposeful work. Right. So you know, part of my origin story is that I had a really bad review from a manager that couldn't articulate what they needed from me to get better. And that really started to drive me into wanting to become a better professional. But the reason why I started the Pre-Treat CSS Instagram page before it was even an LLC was because I was trying all of these things and I sucked. And it was so bad. And I even did CS stories on the Knowledge and Nonsense Network to try and bring this more to the front line, where it's like, I went to go rub elbows at a meeting because the C-suite was, you know, congratulating the department for an endeavor I won't list because it would make it obviously specific to a place. But it was a big deal. So I went there, and I worked second shift at the time, and I didn't get home until 1 a.m. And I woke up at 5 a.m, got dressed, and went to this meeting. And when I got there, it was over. I missed that meeting. I was you know, I did the whole makeup. I put the contour on like it was a thing. Okay. I put the energy in, laid my outfit out before, and I went there, and it was over. There were half a tray of donuts, some bagels, and there was only decaf coffee left. And I felt so defeated, and I really wanted to meet these individuals. And I felt so defeated that I just sat down in that room with a half a cup of decaf coffee. And I just needed a cup of coffee. And it was cold, and I didn't even know what I was doing. And I took a sip of this terrible coffee, and I was just reflecting, and I was like, what am I doing? I'm like, what am I doing? And, coupling that with all the messages that have been left unread on LinkedIn because I've sent huge paragraphs and not being able to articulate exactly what I was trying to say to them. But I remember getting back in my car, and I went home and I started Pre-Treat CSS Instagram, and I made a video on it. If you scroll all the way down, before I had a social media person that made like nice posts when it was just me trying to do the thing out there, and you scroll all the way down, it's there, and it says, hey, so I tried to go to a meeting and no one was there. And I laughed, but I cried in that car for good. So, networking doesn't mean, networking is trying, right? And making sure that you have that attempt and that you are changing your approach every time it doesn't work. And then when it does work, you lean into it and you try to like tighten it up a little bit. And for me, it was that moment with the decaf coffee, and it was cold, and I did not meet those individuals. I've never met those individuals, but I'm also not in that position anymore. So I didn't need to meet those individuals, but you got the Pre-Treat CSS Instagram page.
My heart was just like leaping for just the fatedness of it. And sometimes we look at successful moments as just the times when we hit a home run, right? But this was a successful moment. And
no, I did not.
But it drove you into a space where now you're just hitting home runs in a series.
And well, and I think that's the whole thing, is like there's this absence of professional development and what that actually looks like, because we're only ever seeing this Instagram lifestyle with the end product, right? Like this is the end result. Right, this is the end product here, but you don't know that I tried on 3 pairs of pants to make sure these fit, and you don't know that I went to 2 stores to find these shoes because I loved them. They didn't have them in the size at the other place. And that's here nor there, because that's hardly professional development. But the thing that I'm trying to say is that when you move and you're trying to figure out how to move, it comes with not doing well, because we're not naturally good at the things we're trying to develop, or why would we be developing them? So I just want to make that visible. That's part of the process, right? So
thank you so much for that.
Practice makes perfect, and the more you try, the easier it's going to get, the more confidence that you're going to gain as you start to do you're going to compare. Like, just for me this week, I realized, like, today is day 4.
But day forever.
I've been able to walk past these people that I see on LinkedIn and Instagram, or all the time, and I'm like, hey, how's your morning going?
Hi.
Like, I've always been such a shy, quiet, nervous, anxious, uncomfortable person. But as the week has gone by, it's already, again, practice. Trying is all that matters.
Really, truly, and continuing to show up for yourself, because that key moment for Sarah could have went a whole different direction had she allowed it to.
I was very upset.
Absolutely.
She could have came out of that room feeling dejected and left everything there. Didn't go home and create an Instagram. Maybe I just ate, a pint of cookie dough and went to sleep and propped myself in bed and moved on to my next project.
Well, I mean, let's not play. It drove me into a coffee drive-through line. Okay, I was getting a good cup of coffee. I was going to cry into a good cup of coffee.
There'll be future episodes along these lines, but really to that point, that's where some of this negative coping behavior can come in too, right? So it's not all just great, like I go meditate and I eat some good food and I keep my water, right? It could be that I'm turning to substances, or that I'm harming myself, or that there's a plethora of other things.
Sure.
And this morning we learned about, at Sharon Cohen's presentation, about the cycles of change and transition, the cycle of transition. And there is a bell curve and I can post the link to where it was from.
Absolutely.
But it basically describes the phases of when you're going through a change, and it just describes like an entire transition period where you either rise or you quit. So that is something that we can put for you guys out there. But that situation that you encountered every time you go through,
it's a journey. It's not a destination.
Exactly.
And if you don't prioritize falling in love with the journey, falling in love with the growth, the pain of the lessons, will have a less joyous experience as you move through this stuff. So I want to ask you as we start to fade out, if I recognize myself in any of the things that we were talking about here, the audience recognize themselves in anything that we're saying here, and they want to seek that professional development, how do they get in connection with you?
Oh, I'm on all social media except for Twitter. I am not to the point enough to be on Twitter. I'm too long-winded. But I'm on all social media at Pretreat CSS, except for my Facebook is at CSS Pretreat, because I made one and I really ruined it and I don't know how to delete it, if we're just being honest. But, you know, just remember that hope isn't a strategy, you know, and when you're trying to figure things out, make sure you're not just saying you're trying to figure things out. Do something different, because trying means that you're trying a different approach. Trying means you're doing a different approach every time. So don't rest your ego on saying, oh, well, I tried to go. If that's okay, you don't have to try every day. Today, it's cool. Be easy on yourself. It's all good.
As we said and talked about, because it really is almost like an episode of Hangover. We got here early and you're just delirious and all.
But also, like, I think the networking process and like connecting with so many people and talking,
that's draining. But it's fun. It's so fun.
It is so much fun, but I think it's
so fun.
We're going through so many emotions through it, and you know, emotions during the conversation, and then after, when your brain's like, "Oh my God," or like, "Wow, I just met that person," or "Wow, I sucked." Like you can't.
It's so
today. Like we got home yesterday, like we tried to, you know, just kind of relax and go bowling and just try to de-wind, right? Yeah. Maybe it wasn't the best way to decompress, but like we were hit getting in the car just from talking all day. Because it's so much on our brains.
So much on our brains.
I don't know. I think I was on like a speaking high. Like I get adrenaline when I speak. So like from like the like pre-conference series to the in-booth educations to the socializing with vendors to the chapter awards, like I've been
so much.
I think that's why I'm like, yo, I'm gonna get on that plane home on Friday and they're gonna think I died before my layover. They're gonna be like, is she okay? They'll be like, poke her, because I think that's when all the high is gonna go away. Just check me with my bag.
Oh my God. So one thing that I want to finish with is just to say, you know, it doesn't matter what day we're on.
Sure.
Wake up every day like it's the first day, because it gives you an opportunity to renew, to show up in a way that maybe you felt like you didn't yesterday, or to show up in a new way. So don't look at anything like I've been at this for 2 years, 8 years, 9 years. I'm picking up this thing today, and what does it need from me right now?
Yeah, you don't owe your past presentation any explanation. You can just decide one day to never be like that again.
And the only reason why I want you carrying any type of baggage from your past is if you're carrying the jewels.
Yeah.
That you have. If you're reaching back to that past, reach back for someone that helps you.
Girl, you got diamonds in your bag?
Don't.
Let me get some.
Don't reach back to anything that's going to be a brick and a weight down.
Yeah.
Sarah
Beautiful.
B. Cruz, thank you so much for coming on this episode of Behind the Red Line and doing this with us. We know that, as we were saying, it's been a long one. We also have one more full day of events. If you have not ever been to HSPA conference, please make it a priority to be here with us in 2023.
Nashville. Woo! Yeehaw.
If you attended the HSPA conference, please let us know what that experience was like, what was positive for you, what was not the best for you. Did you have any ideas or things that sparked that you think could be added onto it? Because really these events are curated for us, by us, right? This is being hosted by HSPA. They want to deliver to you what you want to receive, right? And especially when we know that we're dealing with an industry where we have some technicians that are, making wages that we all feel should be higher, right? But we're also dealing with vendors and executives, right? So there's this gamut.
Mhm.
But no matter where you are, when we're talking about class or salary, we all want value when we spend our money,
Yes.
right? So please do follow up, reach out. You can contact on any platforms. You can reach out to them directly. You have their emails. They're all online. But the best advice that I could give is just get in the game and stay in the game.
Yes. That's why I'm leaving Thursday. I'm staying after the game.
That's why I'm staying till Friday to have an off day.
Good for you.
Before I go back.
Yes.
Right? So there's a million different ways to do this thing.
Dude.
But do that personal inventory.
Yeah.
Figure out what it looks like.
Dude, I had such a good time. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
That's another episode of Behind the Red Line. Please join us. We air every other Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Monday. Thank you. I don't know what you said.
Oh, see? Was that a finger gun?
Yeah.
Oh.
Every other Monday.
Yeah.
Every other Monday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bye.
Bye.